Hey everyone. So this is the last interview and it is you interviewing me basically. Because there's no one here to ask questions. So it's a little bit weird. But I'll start with how I got into education, the same question that I ask every interviewee. So I started as not knowing what I wanted to do. Unlike some of our interviewees, I did not know my whole life that I wanted to be a teacher. I played school absolutely with my brothers, but it never really was something I considered as a career. Until my senior year, my parents had been bothering me to figure out where I was going to go to school, and in order to choose a college, I had gotten accepted to all of the ones that I thought that maybe I would actually want to go to. But I wanted to pick the school that would be best for whatever I wanted to do. The problem was I didn't know what I wanted to do. So my parents, on my back about choosing a college so that we could set up, orientation and all those things. I one day was in my 12th grade English class, which was a Brit Lit class. And we were talking about the book 1984. And looking back, I'm like, how did I like that book? But it was the teacher. And I said out loud, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do with my life. What kind of job can I have where I can read and talk about books with people for my whole career? Who will pay me to do that? It's basically a book club. Who's going to pay me to do a book club? And my teacher, I remember Mr. Torgerson, he was also the theater company director teacher, always wore button-down shirt and a tie, and people weren't late for his class, not because we were afraid of him being mean, but because everyone respected him. And so he puts his hands down on my desk and super seriously gets in my face and says, "That's my job." And I was like, ding, I want to be a teacher. And so I immediately, because I remember I had his class 5th hour, and my last hour of the day was a practicum back when they allowed that. They don't allow it anymore in the state of Michigan because it's not academic. It's basically free labor. So they don't allow that anymore. But I was my band director's practicum back then. And I showed up and I was getting ready to organize his attendance for the day to bring to the office. And I said, "Hey, I decided what I want to be when I grow up." And he's like, "Hopefully not a trumpet player," because I was bad at it. And I said, no, I think I want to be an English teacher. And he goes, "Well, then you know where you want to go, right?" And I was like, "No, where should I go?" I said, "I don't want to go to Grand Valley," because everyone was going to Grand Valley from our graduating class. And he's like, "You want to go to Western? They're in the top 5 in the nation for teacher education programs." And I was like, I've never been to Kalamazoo, but yes, that is where I want to go. So that sealed the deal. I never changed my major. It took me until senior year to choose my minor. Some people here asked about my Spanish minor. It took me until end of my 3rd year and a lot of badgering on Western's part to choose a teachable minor. And back then, I was at the end of, I don't really know how they do it for undergrads nowadays, but back then it was like, here's the curriculum guide for 1993 till now. Well, after my graduating class of like 96 to whenever. Well, my graduating class was 2001, and they were coming out with a new curriculum guide and a new program requirements and all of those things for the class right after me. And so I was still grandfathered in through this old one. And so I was the last class who could choose a foreign language as a minor. in the teacher education program. Since then, everyone who's wanted a language as a teachable subject certification has had to major in it. So I was one of the last classes that minored in it. And it's a good thing because I had everything, all of my requirements except a lab science, which was a gen ed, a 100 level gen ed, and my minor to do. So for the last full year of classes that I had before my student teaching, all I did was Spanish with one little bio lab, in there. And that was like, you either learn it or you don't, So luckily, I chose Spanish because it had come easily to me in high school. And I probably could have saved myself a semester if I hadn't taken the 100 level classes, but I took them as a refresher because it had been a few years, and I'm glad I did. So it all worked out. I did my student teaching in the district that I work in. I taught 9th and 10th grade English at Rogers High School under the direction of my mentor teacher, who was amazing and who I have modeled my own. Sorry, I keep yawning. I've modeled my own mentoring of student teachers after her because I felt like she had the perfect blend of guiding me to best practices, but also giving me lots of room to try things and to make mistakes. And it was just a really good experience. Then I spent 2 years. Some of you have talked about subbing. I spent 2 years subbing. Most of it was in Wyoming public schools because I knew the schools and I knew the teachers. They knew me. They would request me. It was long before we had this online system that they use now. It was back when they would still call you in the morning, and you would get on lists, and they would call you as a preferred. I was one of the only certified Spanish teachers in the subbing system for our area schools. So I got lots of calls to do. I did a lot in Jenison for their Spanish department, and I did actually have a long-term position in Holland Public Schools as a Spanish teacher for a semester during that time, teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I guess I have experience 6th through 12th. But the 6th and 7th grade, gosh, that was so long ago. That was like 20 years ago. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I spent 2 years doing the subbing, daily subbing and long-term subbing thing, and it really helped me to get to know a variety of teachers, a variety of educators, a variety of school systems. And then I was offered a position in Wyoming to teach Spanish and English at their high schools between Rogers High School and Wyoming Park High School, and I took it. And that was the fall of 2003, and I've been there ever since. So that is how I got to where I am. Many of you asked how I had not many, but I had about 3 people. How do you transition from teaching us English to teaching your middle schoolers English? I think it's more the other way around. I've been teaching middle school this is my 7th year teaching middle school. So it was more of I look at all of you the way I've looked at all of my student teachers. So I think because I've had student teachers in the past, that gives me the idea of, even though you're not going to be teaching my 8th grade students, I go into our class with the idea that you're going to be teaching, period. And so what are our best practice strategies? Best practice isn't different from elementary to middle to high. Best practice is best practice, and it's whatever's research-based. So yes, there are differences in teaching elementary writing because you have to actually teach them how to write and what letters are and construction and handwriting and things. But the writing genres and things, best practice to do with kids is just the same. It's just different. based on age appropriateness, but the practices themselves are pretty much the same. So I think of all of you from time to time, I'll be like my college kids, and then when I'm talking about you, and then I'll say, not all of them are kids. I guess like none of them really are kids. They're all over 18. So I've started referring to you all as my undergraduates, because you're not kids. I'm used to saying my kids when I talk about students, but that's not. Although you're probably all younger than me, so I guess I could still call you kids. And then balance, I guess, kind of goes with that. I'm really bad at balance. This semester is a prime example of how I take on too much. I am currently doing honestly, I should back up. When I took on this crazy semester, it was under the assumption that my own 8th graders would probably be remote learning and that I would be at home. That's not how it worked out. I was in person for 10 weeks, and now we're remote. But so I normally teach my 8th grade full-time, 5 classes, and then I take one grad class towards my PhD. This semester, Dr. Musin, who is our grad director, as well as a children's lit guru, so I work very closely with her, said, hey, we have this opportunity, and I know you said you wanted to teach a methods course if you could before you graduate, so do you want to teach 3690? And I was like, heck yes, I do. She's like, well, okay, then you need to be full-time as a grad student, so you're going to have to take one more class. So I was like, okay, I can do it, right? I will just manage my time. So I'm taking her class, which is multicultural adolescent young adult literature, and I'm taking Dr. Gogan's class, Methods for Teaching College Writing. His is usually aimed at grad students who are teaching English 1050. I'm not teaching 1050. I haven't had to teach 1050. I taught the equivalent of 1050 when I worked at Grand Rapids Community College about 10 years ago. So that wasn't a requirement for me. And because I'd already taught something like that, and because I taught high school composition, which is similar, I was thrilled that they trusted me to teach a 300 level methods class, because this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to teach methods courses. So that was another question somebody asked, like, what will you stay in the classroom once you get your PhD? The short answer to that is yes, and then no. There's a longer answer that requires describing what the retirement system is like in public schools. But it basically means that let's see, this is 17. So let me see, I got to do math. I teach words, not numbers, so sometimes that's hard. So 8 more years of teaching, and then I can retire from the public school system. And so it's going to take me at least 5 of those to finish my courses, study and take my comp tests, and then do my dissertation and defense. So I'll be close. And even then, when I can retire, the idea is that I would retire from the public school system and then start working as a professor somewhere. But if we're not looking to move, because my husband is a business owner, a local business owner. So that means that I would probably stay in the classroom unless something local presented itself for me. But yeah, that is kind of my goal. I do want to teach future teachers like yourselves. This is my dream job right here. Is what I want to do. But that being said, I'm sucking at balance this semester, especially seeing as I have a middle schooler this year, his first year of middle school, and he's trying to navigate remote stuff, and COVID, and that's been tricky. My daughter is in kindergarten, so she's in full-time school for the first time, navigating COVID and those things. And then my middle kid is a third grader, which we found out is a pretty benchmark year. And he is special education with emotional impairment. So we've had a lot of stuff going on here in our lives. And then you add on that I'm taking 2 classes, teaching 6 classes, and things have gotten crazy. My family has been extremely patient with me, but I think that's because we all know that after this semester, I will not do this to any of us again because it's crazy. That said, let's see. I'm trying to see here. Oh, there were a few questions about middle school, like class management and discipline. I will say that was the hardest thing for me when going from high school to middle school. So in high school, my classroom management was basically just keep them engaged. There were never any, I never had discipline problems unless, when I first started teaching, I realized real quick that downtime gave kids time to mess around and to be, find ways to be a discipline problem. If you kept kids engaged the entire hour and doing things and really wanting to do what they're doing, you didn't have any discipline problems. So my classroom management as a high school teacher was keep them engaged. When I moved down to middle school, that did not work. Middle schoolers are a different breed, yo. So the kids could want to learn. They could be totally engaged, right? But at the same time, they're like, squirrel, because they saw a cute boy walk past, or they are having their menstrual cycle for the first time. All of these things are happening in middle school, and stuff that I've never had to deal with. I had a kid lose a tooth. What? So these are things that I didn't have to deal with at the high school level. So I had to really quickly adjust how I structure management. It still relies very heavily on engagement, but transitions are trickier with middle schoolers. So I've learned that having kids involved in going through the learning targets, the success criteria, lots of, okay, I use visual timers. I use a lot of, you have 2 minutes. That means you can probably write 2 more sentences and that's it. Or silent reading is done in 2 minutes. That means finish the paragraph you're on. Because sometimes kids don't know what 2 minutes means. Like they have no grasp of that time. So we have a lot of, or I'm going to call on this person, this person, this person. This person volunteered, so I'm going to call on them, but then I'm going to go to X, Y, and Z. So be ready with a response. So a lot of previewing those things, letting them know what's going on, a lot of routines. I don't spring things on middle schoolers the way I would with high schoolers. They're a lot less likely to adapt quickly than high schoolers are. So yeah, that's kind of how I do classroom management. And I make sure that we're not doing anything for longer than, like if we're doing a full class novel, I will stop every 4-ish to 5 minutes and ask a question or have them turn and talk or something, because asking middle schoolers to sit and just get doesn't work either. You're going to have management problems. Favorite grade to teach? It's always the one you're teaching, or at least it should be, right? Your favorite grade to teach should be the one you're teaching. That should be the one that you're throwing your all into. And that, for me, historically has been true. When I first started teaching, I loved 11th graders. I still have a very fondness for juniors in high school. It's a great group. But I wouldn't take a job teaching English 11 now if it was offered to me. because right now I love 8th grade. It's what I'm doing. It's always what you're currently doing. If it's not, if you find yourself thinking, I hate 4th grade, I wish I was back teaching 2nd grade, this 4th grade stuff sucks, then you need to start looking for a different position or asking how you can get back into that grade, because in order to be an effective, great, best practice teacher, you have to love the grade you're teaching. It has to be your favorite. And for me, that's always been true. When the first year I ever taught seniors, I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I literally lost my mind when they informed me that I was going to go from seniors to 8th grade. I thought it would be terrible because all I had in my head was me as an 8th grader, and I was wrong. I was so wrong. I am so thankful to have been so wrong. 8th grade has been my favorite so far, but I think that's because it's the grade I teach and I love what I'm doing. So you have to love the grade that you're in. I'm going to talk more about co-teaching because a lot of you ask questions about co-teaching and stuff. So I'm going to talk more about co-teaching and special ed, I think, in the next module, because I could spend an hour talking about those things. I like the question. How will my anti-racist and equitable pedagogy research help you to become a better teacher for your students? Well, most of my students are Black and brown. So anything I do that way will benefit them. As a white teacher standing in front of majority Black and brown students, I am already the oppressor. And so I have to work against that. And so everything that I've done so far, it has not been perfect. I have thankfully had people around me who I can trust to call me in and talk to me about things that might be problematic. And I've been able to change those things. So I would say, yeah, right now I'm researching how to avoid teaching the single story, the danger of the single story, because we teach 2 novels in my 8th grade class that focus on a Black male protagonist, both who deal with gun violence. And so we do not want to teach the stereotype that Black male equals violence. And so my research right now is, what do teachers do when they have one book to teach students? How do we push back against that danger of creating and teaching a stereotype? So all of these things inform my teaching. My research was chosen because of my students, because I love them and I want to do the best I can for them. It was also chosen because I have white children and I need to be able to teach that towards my own white children, and my white students need to learn how we can be co-conspirators in anti-racist policy. Let's see. The middle school thing. So I am certified 612. I double checked. I thought it was 712, but it's 612. So 6th grade is apparently a secondary endorsement. I'm not honestly sure in my building how many people we have who have secondary and who have the middle school endorsement. I don't think our school generally cares. I've not heard of anyone caring. I think you could teach those. I mean, apply for those positions. Absolutely. If you have an elementary ed, it says you're certified social studies and ELAs. Absolutely. There's no reason why they wouldn't hire you if you apply for those. That would not be the deterrent. I don't know what word I'm looking for. But absolutely apply for those positions. You're just as qualified as anyone else if you have certifications in social studies and ELA. Absolutely. I don't really know of anybody saying, "Oh, it's just It's just a certification. It's not actually, we need good teachers. If you're a good teacher, they're going to hire you. My favorite part about teaching middle school is that they're goobers. I love them. They're weird, and there's this huge difference. You have kids who are still collecting Pokemon cards, and you have kids who are like currently suspended from school because of drugs. So you have a wide range. You have kids who sleep with stuffies and have never thought about like kissing anyone, and you have kids who are quite active. So it's a wide range, the middle school, and there's a wide range of needs, and they're still little kids, and they still look at me as someone, hopefully, as an adult that they can love and trust in a way that high school kids don't anymore. If I could give you all advice, I would have to echo Julie and say, know what your why is and keep that in your heart, because things get hard. Stuff gets messy in education. There's a lot of politics in education. And the thing I think that drives good teachers out of the profession are the adults, not the kids. The kids drive the bad teachers out because those bad teachers can't love their students. They can't love all of them, and that drives them out. But that's good. We want kids to weed out the bad for us. But what drives out the good teachers are the adults and the politics of education. And so sometimes it is important to just be able to close your door and say, no more adults for me today. I'm just going to focus on these people here, these smaller people here in my room. So I have more I could say to answer all of these questions, but I don't want to make you all listen to anything that's longer than 30 minutes. So I will address a lot of the special ed things and co-teaching in the next module about teaching students with disabilities. Otherwise, if you have more questions, or I guess if you want me to do a part 2, that seems a little presumptuous on my part though, like super arrogant. I've got all this stuff, this knowledge to impart on you. But if you are out there dying of things, put it in the response. I haven't really been replying to a lot of your responses, although I have been sharing them with our interviewees because I think they're lovely, and I'm so glad that you've been enjoying this series that I decided to do. But I will respond in the response to any other questions there are, or if there's a lot of the same question, maybe I'll do a part 2. We'll see how this weird week goes. So anyway, thank you for the interview.